Okay.
Hi, I'm Janie,
And I'm Dan.
and we're with Achieve the Lifestyle. And today we're going to talk about eating and drinking. And so this is going to be very simple, very straightforward, because there is we realize there's underutilization of people like dietitians and nutritionists who have a wealth of knowledge in this, but there are some basic principles that we think are missed a lot among the general population that we'll talk about.
Yeah, I think with everything we do is more about giving guidelines, and then it's probably up to you as the receiver of these guidelines or information that we give, or principles, if you will,
Mhm.
on how you apply them and how you go about implementing them into your life. Because everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have different preferences. Everybody's going to have different taste, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Mhm.
with everything that we say, like training, like eating, you are going to end up with something different. What matters is that you apply the principle of bringing attention to your nutrition, which is
Right.
what we're talking about today.
So I think the easiest thing to start off with is hydration. And I I'm just going to go ahead and say the vast majority of people are underhydrated. I think I can safely say that.
Yeah, drinking water still. A lot of people drink water, but I don't think when people start saying the amount of water they drink, what they consider drinking water, it's usually pretty
Yeah.
low.
But you also see people who are at the gym who are naturally going to be drinking more water. Whereas in
Hmm.
my setting, like I had a patient who told me she urinates twice a day. I do that before 8 a.m.
Yeah,
like, so,
that's a lot.
yeah.
And that's
So,
not to say, caveat there that you need to walk around with a freaking gallon and you need to drink 2 gallons of water a day. That's not to
no.
say that, but
I
yeah.
think a safe guideline to start at is to take your body weight, divide it into, and try to consume that many ounces of water. And usually, what I tell my patients is the keyword being try. Um, now, you don't have to go out of your way to down that water the very first day, but you may see, like, oh, this actually comes pretty easy, or I feel good after a few days of doing it. And then, depending on where you go further from there, your activity levels, you working with a dietitian or a nutritionist, they may say, no, you need to move it up or whatever recommendation. But I think it's fair to say the vast majority of people don't drink enough water.
Yeah, on the topic of liquids, like it's also something to watch. What else are you drinking
Right.
throughout your day? Because that could be some sneaky ass calories that get
Right.
into your diet if you're drinking, crazy venti Starbucks mocha blah blah
Right.
blah 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 blahs with all the added sugar and stuff, and drinking Gatorades and things like that that are just a bunch of stuff
Right. And
where that you might think are good for you, but not
right.
really.
And so generally when I speak with my patients, one of the very first things, and it's not even in regards to weight loss, it's just I ask them because I'm curious, what are you consuming on a daily basis in liquid or food form? And it's low hanging fruit in optimizing health if somebody's drinking multiple sugary drinks a day, whether that's, the mocha frappuccinos, the sodas, juices, Gatorade. You have to be careful because it has lots of sugar in it. There's other electrolyte powders that you can use that don't have the added excessive amounts of sugar, but then sugar does facilitate in hydration. So it's again a further discussion you need to have on an individual basis, depending on who you are in your current health state. Um, but uh, like I said, cutting out the sugary drinks is a great way to optimize your health. I personally am not a fan of fruit juices. I know some people may be otherwise on it, but if you're consuming high levels of fruit juice every day, I don't see the point. I'd rather see you eat the fruit. And in reality, would you eat as much fruit that's needed to squeeze to make the juice that you consume? Probably not. So,
Yeah, and then the fruit comes with fiber, depending on the fruit, which slows digestion down, so that sugar doesn't hit the bloodstream as quickly as it does when you put it into liquid form.
right,
So yeah, it's definitely like I said, just it's sneaky ways that can mess you up with the drinking.
right.
Um,
And we also need to be careful with coffee. I love coffee. I'm not saying give up coffee at all. I'm not. So, um, but we just need to be careful what you're adding to your coffee, because some people are like, oh, I only drink coffee in the morning, but how much cream are you putting in it? How much sugar are you putting in it?
Is it even
Um,
cream? Maybe
right,
it's cream in name only, you
right.
know?
And so, and I'm not villainizing sugar in your coffee, but I think we need to pay attention to the amount, because there is discrepancy about what the governing powers that be tell us is okay to consume and the actual scientific fact of what's okay to consume, because the influence of money changes that number from what is scientifically proven to be healthy to what is actually recommended to us. So I think the last I heard, a teaspoon and a half is acceptable in coffee. And so actually measuring that out, because if you eyeball sugar, you're probably over consuming.
I'm a culprit. I
Yeah.
used to have my sugar with coffee back in the day. Yeah, a lot of, but it's raw sugar that I was putting. Yeah, okay. It was a lot of sugar. That coffee was dessert, straight up dessert.
Yeah.
So there's something there, because then next thing you know, you're giving yourself a sugar buzz and a sugar craving, and that's something that we want to avoid now that we're talking nutrition, where you're
Right. Right.
living for the sugar.
So I think, we're going to getting over into food more, but with beverages, water's the king. Water's what we should all be consuming the majority of the day. If you want to add things to that, if that facilitates you to get more water in, I'm a fan of it. Um, but like I said, if these are just broad recommendations, if you want to get down to the fine combing of things, that needs to be done on a more person by person basis.
Mhm. We're shedding a light
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
topic.
And I would say let's not talk about alcohol today,
No, we're not
because
going to
I
talk
think
about
that
alcohol
needs
today.
its own discussion.
That's a sensitive topic too.
Yeah,
Like, with alcohol consumption. So yeah, let's leave it out of
yeah,
here because we want to stick to the
yeah.
guidelines.
But let's talk about food. And so again, dietitians and nutritionists are a huge wealth of knowledge that I think are highly untapped. And I've worked with a dietitian, I've worked with a nutritionist. All of these, not because I was at a turning point in my health where it was like I either do this or I'm on a medication, or I'm on a medication, I need to come off of it. I did it as a point in how can I fuel my body better and what can I learn? Because I know as a medical professional, I did not learn all there is about diet in school. And so there's a lot to be desired in my own personal education and then what I know to share with other people. So, um,
So let's lay it out.
right.
Um,
Old foods don't cause new diseases.
Boom. That's the first thing. Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
go further back. Like, what are we dealing with nationally speaking? Maybe even globally. I don't know if there's any other countries that are as sick as us. I think there's countries that are trending
Yeah.
towards our
There are.
level
Yeah.
of disease, like China and India.
Right.
Um, but we are by far probably the sickest nation in the world. So what do we have? Diabetes, like type 2
Hypertension,
diabetes, hypertension,
heart disease,
heart disease,
hyperlipidemia,
number one killer in the country. So
cancers.
cancers, yep. And
Um,
now cancers, we lifestyle related, like stuff that you can trace back almost to.
well, it's shown that breast cancer is linked to carrying excessive weight.
You can link that
So,
that connection.
which
Yeah.
diet is the foundation of that. So, um, now I forgot where we were going.
Well, the establishing the disease and how a lot of that disease is linked to two things. It's inactivity, which we've
Yep.
mentioned before, and it's what you're putting in your gullet.
Right. Right.
So a lot of the stuff that you see at your grocery store when you're walking up and down the aisles is new food, meaning it wasn't around 100 years ago. It's highly processed, lots of added
Mm-hmm.
sugars, lots of preservatives. I think that's the word they use to
Yeah.
describe it, but it's really, It's just stuff that you probably shouldn't be consuming in large quantities.
Right.
Um, and what we have because of that is the trend that we have right now with all
Yeah.
these diseases. So, parting from that, when we start talking about nutrition, we're probably looking at more of a whole food based diet. And I
Mhm.
ain't talking about buying the stuff at Whole Foods. I'm talking about actual, that joke, I'm talking about actual foods that, when you grab it, it probably looks like something that you would see in nature. Makes sense? And prioritizing that on your plate over stuff that's in boxes and whatever,
Bags.
in bags and
Yeah.
whatever, even though you could put vegetables and fruits in bags, but y'all know what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
So the thing that's really unfortunate is that in this country, um, we've demonized a lot of foods that are good for people, and we've also made foods that are bad for people very accessible and very inexpensive. And so unfortunately there's a lot of people who live in, food deserts or park deserts, so they don't have the opportunity to go to a grocery store, or in the economy today go to multiple grocery stores, because we go to multiple grocery stores to try to get the best deals, and so a lot of people don't have that luxury. Um, and so maybe they live only, because we're in Florida, maybe they live only walking distance to Publix. Well, Publix is expensive, and so but they don't have the opportunity to go to something that's more affordable because of transportation and things like that. So we understand that. So we're more just talking that within your means, choosing more foods that are whole, things that were found in nature, and things that aren't highly processed if you're able to.
Yeah, and that question, like, without going down the rabbit hole, is why
Right.
is it, which is a question that I feel like all of us should be asking ourselves and representatives and whoever, people, why is it that something that you can grow in nature that requires no added stuff to it is always more expensive and less accessible than shit that needs to go through factory processes and so forth?
Right.
Just
Like,
something to think about.
yeah, I was listening to something that says, how is an avocado that falls off a tree? It's a tree,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How is an avocado that falls off a tree $3 to $4, but I can get like two tacos from Taco Bell for $2 when that's multiple ingredients, not just one avocado.
Yep.
And so that's a huge issue. And if you've ever had the ability to travel to another country, it's embarrassing in grocery stores, the section that's marked America. It's all Pop Tarts, Oreos, cereals, things like that. And so we're not known for having great diets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And globally speaking, it's almost like they make fun of us,
Yeah.
really, because we eat all that. That's what's associated with the American palate,
Yeah.
stuff that isn't really food. I mean, it
Yeah.
really, like, it fills your belly, but it's not nourishing your body,
Right.
So that's stuff that, again, questions to ask ourselves, like,
Right.
hey, why is it like this? And, you know, how do we kind of break the mold a little bit on it
Right.
and trend towards eating more stuff that looks like nature, if you will, you know, whole.
So usually the advice I give for people is to minimize processed food intake and to increase protein intake. And so I think that that's a big dietary key that a lot of people, especially women, aren't aware of, is how crucial adequate amounts of protein in your diet is.
Yeah.
And have you seen that as well?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it from everybody, even dudes. Like, it's just, yeah, we think that guys are more likely to eat a steak, but it's like the rest of their day doesn't look like that.
Right.
It's like, oh,
Right.
I skip breakfast. Then lunch is like some sandwich, and then dinner's really good.
Right.
And that means you're probably a little bit underfed.
Right. And then let's also talk about what's the typical American breakfast. Growing up, it was Carnation Instant Breakfast for me, or cereal, or Pop Tart, or something quick. And then on the weekends, it was like your eggs, bacon,
Hmm.
things like that. Um, and that's just not ideal, because where's the protein in the breakfast. There's not any, and so you're just burning through carbs first thing in the morning, then crashing. Um, so we just, people our age, because we're in our late 30s, just haven't been brought up with the best recommendations of food. And we were taught the food pyramid, which is trash. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Trash? Is it? Horseshit.
Oh god. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm having it, there's a whole movement to reteach people how to appropriately nourish their bodies. And unfortunately, a lot of medical providers aren't um, fluent in how to relay that information to patients. And I will say a lot of people in healthcare, from providers to staff to, you know, non-clinical workers, um, eat very unhealthy, very unhealthy, very much processed foods, especially people working overnights. And patients come in, they bring me chocolate, or they're like, hey, it's like, we really appreciate how you're doing at your clinic, here's cookies, or we brought you breakfast, here's bagels. And so there's just a huge change that needs to happen, diet wise, because we're missing a lot of proper ways to nourish our bodies. But sorry, I kind of segued there. But getting back into protein, the current um, recommendation for protein, I'm not familiar that there's a regular health one that I don't think I was taught on how much protein a person should consume in a day. It's all information I've obtained through my own learning individually. But I think right now it's usually about a gram of protein per
um,
pound of body weight.
that's in
It's a
the fitness
broad.
circles.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
but because we've
like,
talked earlier about how fitness is sort of ahead of the
yeah,
scientific
that it
recommendations,
in fitness, that's
or
something
the
that
medical
we that
recommendations,
you
excuse
know,
me.
and most performance oriented nutritionists and dietitians are probably gonna work somebody towards that,
Right,
towards something close to that, and whether it's a gram per pound of body weight or gram per pound of desired body weight.
right,
So if you weigh 200, you want to weigh 150, eating somewhere closer to that versus eating the full 200. There's a lot of ways to approach that nutritionists and dietitians go about it.
right.
But yeah, that's in the more
Yeah,
modern, like practice,
right,
scope of practice. But it used to be, conventionally speaking, they talk about zero point 0.8 per kilogram.
right. Point per kilogram.
So
That's right.
which cuts it, essentially cuts
It in half.
in half. It's the disparity there is quite, uh is a lot
Right.
when you go with that versus, a more performed. It's just the numbers are ridiculously big. Here's what we'll tell you: eat protein.
Yeah.
You want,
With every meal.
yeah, with every meal you probably want to plan your meals around protein. Think fun facts about protein. First one being, your body has to ramp up really hard digestively to digest that. So you burn calories just digesting protein alone. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. Like, you eat a protein meal, fish, steak, whatever, and 30 some percent of those calories are burnt in the digestion process. That's good. That's good stuff. You don't get that with carbs. Okay, things, iron, B vitamins, etc. All these things are
Zinc.
probably going to be found in zinc. Are
Yeah.
probably going to be found in the protein.
And
And
solely in animal protein. Real quick segue. Artificial proteins, plant proteins, things like that don't provide the same nutrients as animal protein does.
yeah,
And so that's something that, if you are choosing to be vegan or vegetarian, I'm sorry, no, but honestly, you should talk to a healthcare professional, because you do need to be taking supplements if you are not already, because you are missing on a lot of things if you're not consuming animal protein.
yeah, and it's really hard to get the protein numbers
Right,
up.
right.
Another fun fact about protein: it's super satiating.
Yep.
So it's really hard to overeat protein because you're going to be full.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good thing. Um, So with that stuff in mind, you should probably be planning meals. This is something that I would say it's really good advice. Plan your meals around protein and then add to that,
Right.
versus, hey, I'm gonna have pasta, and then you might forget the protein and then you just
Right.
posted yourself into a sugar coma, you know?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people are hesitant with meat because of cholesterol, because that's something that's been demonized. And we'll go into this with later posts, but the whole Ansel Keys study kind of,
Ooh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not an accurate
Well,
scientific study because it cannot be reproduced, therefore it's not fact. But
the Ansel, well,
yeah, so
tell them
we'll
what
yeah,
Ansel Keys studies is. It's, so they call it the 7 country study, which is the scientific study that gave us the current food pyramid recommendations, where your dietary recommendations are based on grains and carb consumption. So eat a lot of bread, eat a lot of this, and then your proteins are closer to the
right,
smaller end of the spectrum. And the study was later proven to be bought and paid for to
yeah,
keep it uh, PC, if you will. So that's something that we will definitely go
right,
into and discuss. Um, I think going into, like everything, we want people to take ownership of their situation, and basically take general guidelines that we provide here, that we point them to, and then start applying it
right.
to your life. So what's actionable here? What are, like, patient comes in and they're, hey, you're type 2 diabetic if you don't do this now.
Oh, okay, so they're at a turning point.
Yeah, they're like, because usually that's the moment that people get shaken into,
Sometimes, yeah.
in sometimes,
Yeah.
exactly, into.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll stop being cynical. So what do I usually tell them? So
Yeah,
first is
let's go into that. Let's put something together, be
yeah.
like, hey,
So
try
very
this.
first thing I do, which I think is lacking, and if your medical provider does not do this, run. No, you probably need to find a better one. But I ask them what they're currently eating, and I tell them like, what do you eat during the day? Oh, no, walk me through a day. What do you have for breakfast? What do you have for lunch, dinner, snacks? Tell me everything, and I just see what they're already consuming because I'm not trying to tell somebody to completely erase what they're doing and do something different. I mean, maybe that's what they need to do, but it's not going to happen in a day. I've also had the opportunity of seeing patients in their homes, and that opens up a huge different perspective of how people live and how to approach people as well. So I start with protein. I tell them they need to, increase protein intake and increase water. I don't take anything away usually unless they're saying they drink a ton of juice or soda. I say start working on decreasing that. But I focus more on you can eat more protein, you can drink more water, do these things and see what happens.
Yeah, good point. I don't think with everything, it's not realistic to tell somebody, unless they're really messed up, that it's like, hey, you either do this now or you're gonna keel over soon. But it's always, with everything, it's a gradual thing. Exercise, nutrition, you probably should be thinking more about steps to follow, or phases
Mm-hmm.
to get you to the ideal position of, okay, I'm a whole food diet type of person. I barely, I don't drink soda. I barely partake in all these other stuffs that could be messing with my health. And I'm, 90% of the time I'm eating good stuff. So I always tell people, it's like a volume knob. Like, just do a little bit more, do a little bit more, do a little bit more, until the next thing you know, you're full on the wagon. So that's a good point. Like, gradually, no, oh no, you can't have that anymore. That probably is gonna fail.
Right?
You
Because a
know.
lot of people, to their credit, they are trying and what they think that they're doing, they think they're being healthy. Like, I had a giant bowl of oatmeal this morning. I'm like, awesome. Have a couple eggs with that, increase the protein with that. And then maybe they won't have as much oatmeal, or now they're having a carb with a source of protein and fat, which is helpful.
Yes. Fun fact there as well. Like, if you just have carbs alone by themselves, the digestive process is really quick. And then we're talking about spiking blood sugar, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas if you have it with fat and protein, you're decreasing that, and it becomes more of a steady drip release, keeping your levels, you know, little, just a slow rise and then a slow decrease, versus the spikes, which is where we tend to get in trouble
Right.
with blood sugar. Yeah. So another important reason to eat protein with every meal
Right.
and not just base your meal around, oh, I'm gonna have these carbs, which is kind of what we've been conditioned to.
Yeah.
Like if you just have cereal for breakfast, where's the protein in that?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the protein?
And the other challenge is, especially for women, and I've fallen victim of this too, when they're, they come in and they're about, they're like, hey, you're pre-diabetic, we need to make changes or else you're gonna, progress to diabetes or anything else where you need to lose weight. And if, as I mentioned before, if they just get that, term exercise more, eat less, a lot of women aren't eating enough. They're under eating, under feeding, which is going to put you into sort of like this plateau place where you can't budge on weight. You may be even putting on weight, but more importantly than the weight, you feel like shit. You maybe don't have your periods. You're bloated all the time. You're constipated. Your sleep is shit. Your
Mm-hmm.
energy's down. You have acne. All these things can be signs of being underfed.
Yep.
So,
I this one I see a lot
yeah.
because that's something, woman comes in, wants to lose weight, and I have to in the assessment process, we have to talk about what's being eaten, and it's usually not enough to support the exercise activity that they want to do, that they, that we
Or they
have
are
to do,
doing.
or that they are even doing,
Right.
because you see this in fitness, people that are already in fitness, um, or that are they have a fitness regimen, but that nutrition is not supporting their fitness regimen. And that's guys that go out the happy hour after they're clanging and banging at the gym. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to support long term your fitness goal if you're doing that all the time. Not saying don't go to happy hour with your friends and have a social life, but
Get fit, get lit.
yeah, exactly, memories. But if you're doing that all the time, you're probably not putting yourself in a good spot. And same thing with people that are not, that they're eating fast food all the time or whatever. Oh, I work out, so I eat fast food. Now, fam, that ain't gonna work. And then this one where that intake, that caloric intake, just doesn't match the level of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and essentially, what you're doing is just spit. Not only are you spinning your wheels, but you're probably grinding yourself out at that point. And that is so common to hear during the assessment process. How's the sleep? I wake up a lot. And then when you start peeling the layers back, probably not eating enough,
Right.
and then just putting themselves in this really depleted state because that's you know, you're overstressing your body. Your body starts shutting down functions, usually for everybody, but for women specifically, the hormones start getting all out of whack.
Right.
Your sleep hormones are fucked. That's why you're waking up 20 times in the middle of the night, etc., etc., etc.
Right. And so, the other challenge with, when people come in to make dietary changes is getting them to follow through with a nutritionist or dietitian. I'm more than happy to refer. I always try to refer. Unfortunately, a lot of the dietitians or nutritionists don't get good reimbursement from insurance. And if people are paying for their insurance, they want to try to utilize it, which rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of dietitians are stepping away from participating with insurances, as they should, because they need to be paid more. Um, and so then there's that issue because health insurance is lacking on what will truly benefit somebody. And then getting that patient or that person to, and I'm sure you've gotten this too, if you recommend a client that, oh, hey, I want you to talk to somebody at your job who does nutrition,
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
them to follow through with that
Oh
can be
yeah.
a challenge because if it's extra money, is it worth it? Yes, but you have to get somebody to see that.
But again, we talk about what are you going to pay with? You pay with time, you
Yep.
pay with money. So to separate it there, if you're going to pay with time, you're going to have to sit on the internet and do a lot of research
Right.
and comb through a lot of bullshit and good stuff and do the homework yourself,
And then
which
test it out on
and then
yourself.
test it out on yourself. So now you're paying with time. It could take you a year,
Mm-hmm.
2 years to find something that works for you. You could just give up because you get frustrated, or you pay with money and you hire a person to point you in the right direction. Um, and if you don't want to do either of those, then you pay with time and money at the doctor's office when you're sick. Like let's be blunt about this. That's what it is. Those are the choices here. You're
Yeah,
not gonna
it's
sit at home and starve yourself into health. You're not gonna sit at home and just I'm not doing anything, so I'm going to be fine. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
So understanding, like, if somebody came to me and like, hey, I either pay somebody for nutrition advice and nutrition counseling, or I pay for a trainer. I'm like, go to the nutrition person.
Yep.
Get that, because that's the hardest thing to nail. I always say this: as hard as it is to get somebody to come to the gym and start working out, that's hard. That's an uphill climb. That's an uphill battle. If you're sedentary, and getting a person in the gym is hard AF. Getting somebody to eat the right way and eat, or eat better, even not even a perfect way, eat better, is even harder.
Yeah.
That shit is hard as fuck.
Yeah.
As soon as you start talking nutrition, I don't want to hear it, but
Yeah.
that's what it feels like. So I would always be like, hey, do this or do that. Okay, go talk to the nutrition person first.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there from trusted sources. So
Why? I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole, but medical insurance not paying, or not, you know, including nutritionists, dietitians in the plans.
so they do if a person like already has diabetes.
And
But
it's
I'm talking about doing it
preventive.
before diabetes is even on the table, because why wait?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like if I can, if somebody comes in for physical, say it's a 22-year-old bebops in because they're healthy, they feel great, and I'm like, hey, tell me about what you eat in a day, and they eat out every single time, or they're something's like not right. I would love to be able to be like, your plan covers you to see a dietitian. Let's revamp your nutrition ideas and thoughts before you get 30, before you get 40, and now we're worried about hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, hyperlipidemia, all these things.
now I've seen people that have it in their plans, but they got like the platinum package.
Yeah,
You
or
know, like they
and
got
this
the
is this
the
is
Lamborghini of medical
yeah, and I
coverage.
don't mean to. I'm just going to blanket it, but a lot of dietitians who do par with insurance aren't the best. I'm sorry. And if they do, they're not getting the money they deserve. So what care are they giving? I don't know. And so just in my experience, I have had better luck outsourcing dietitians for patients who need it than going through their insurance.
Yeah, it's always coming.
And I'm
Like,
not saying that if you are a dietitian and you do par with insurance that you're bad. I haven't met you. And just in my personal experience. So I would just, if you're a patient and you want to see a dietitian, I would explore that.
yeah, I've had an experience with something
Yeah.
similar to where, lady at the gym, where we get into the nutrition talk, and I find myself like, what you, but why are you doing that? She wasn't, what we were talking about, not eating and trying to train herself into her ideal body, and under consuming calories, skipping meals, all this stuff. And as the conversation goes on, I find out she's a dietitian. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. So that's not the shit on dietitians. I'm not. That's not what we're doing or generalizing or saying. But we're, you know,
It's like with any profession, there's
yeah.
good and bad.
There's good and bad. There's fat trainers out there, y'all. There's fat trainers out there. So
Yeah.
there's that too. I
Right.
mean,
So it's just definitely trying to find someone who works with you. If you're really athletic, you need somebody who has uh, credentials in sports nutrition. If you are a woman, you need someone who knows more about women's nutrition, because it's different than men. Our hormones are different. It's what are your goals? What are you looking for? There's some dietitians who specialize in getting people off cholesterol medications. There's some who specialize in optimizing
autoimmune,
women's
yeah.
hormones for period optimization. And so
People that deal with autoimmune issues, people that
exactly.
deal with eating disorders. So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of flavors of pros in this area.
And so
And
that's why I hesitate to just send a referral for a patient, because it just goes into the ether and it finds, oh, Blue Cross Blue Shield pars with this dietitian, and they may not match at all. And so I think it needs to be a little bit more specialized.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, something, so in giving people some takeaways here, like when we talk about
Yeah.
nutrition.
Sorry, we kind of got off
Oh yeah,
a lot.
because I mean we could go in on this.
Yeah.
We could go in on this because there's, and this it's an introduction, and we're
Yeah,
always going to keep talking about this stuff and bringing in other parts of the conversation because these conversations are never ending, really, with all the factors that play into, first of all, why is nutrition so generally fucked up for the general population,
right,
to people that are already fitness aware or health aware, if you will, but they're still not, you know, they have a hard time dialing it in. Um, and if you are dialed in, quote unquote, how to keep optimizing, because it's a, we've been eating well for a long time. Like, I mean, I'm double digits on this, and I'm still learning. I'm
right.
still like, oh shit, I didn't know that. Oh
Yeah.
fuck, oh yeah, we should include that in our diet, or oh boom, we should get that out.
And I
You
don't
know,
expect our diet to look the same 5 years from now than it does now because I'm
probably
sure we're
not.
going to learn so much
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
Yeah.
be in our 40s, be it probably
Why are you
needs
going to
something
say that?
different. You know, say that again.
So why are you going to say that?
Yeah, be old.
So I think if we want to go to takeaways to kind of wrap this up, it's optimizing quality of your food before you restrict calories. I think is a great place to start.
Ooh, that's really good.
Right. So before, I mean, because like I said,
Before you worry about the
yeah,
macros,
just be like, oh, I need to lose weight. I need to cut my calories. And if, just side note, if you're a female and you're eating 12,000 calories or less,
12,000, 1,200.
12, oh God, if you're eating
Yeah.
12,000, I'm going to be your friend. Let's go. Let's
Ooh,
go
let's
eat.
go eat.
But if
Yeah.
you're eating 1,200
Michael Phelps
calories,
plan.
1,200 calories or less, excuse me, please fucking stop and eat more because that is terrifying. But also, please consult with a healthcare provider on how to slowly eat more to help you feel well. But optimizing quality of your food, and by, I'm not saying you need to go to Whole Foods and buy the
No,
grass
no, it doesn't.
fed,
The organic stuff, no, that's not. If you,
posh
yeah,
meats or anything like that.
that's a whole separate
Yeah,
conversation.
but I
Yeah,
think by better quality of food, we mean more natural foods, less preservatives, less shit in the food that you can't pronounce. And
yeah. When you turn, we do read ingredient labels.
yeah,
Like when you turn that mofo around, you're like, "Ooh, this granola looks cool," and then you turn it around, and then it's got all sorts of shit that you can't pronounce. You should probably put it back.
yeah,
That's what we're saying.
yeah. Shopping in the perimeter of the grocery store is
Still good
always
advice.
is, yeah.
They're fucking with it though.
Yeah, and another way to optimize your diet is eat at home more.
Mhm.
Stop eating out so much because that's just going to be packed full of a bunch of unnecessary things that you cannot control that you're putting in your body. And so if you eat at home more, that's better. I get challenged a lot with it's easier to eat out, it's faster. Okay, sure, it is, but is it? Because if you took the time to plan and you made food ahead of time, it really doesn't take that much time. That's also a bonding experience you can have with your family if you have one. Or you plan ahead to have things in the freezer to pull out on the busy days. We don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like to have a kid doing a bunch of sports, so I'm not going to pretend that you can make the time there the same day to make dinner. Plan ahead, plan accordingly because it's your health. And if you need help doing that, there's tons of resources out there. I also have patients who are truck drivers and they're like, I can't, I don't know because I'm on the road. I was a traveling PA seeing patients in their homes. I was on the road all day. I still brought my own food. Is it the best? No, but I made it work. Is a lot of eating in your car? Yeah, it is. But preferably not when driving, though I can't say
Hmm.
I didn't do that just to try to get my day done faster. But anyway, um, but the thing is, you have to make it a priority. You have to plan ahead, but you need to eat at home more so you have more control over what you're putting in your body. And you're also setting an example for your kids, if you have them, on making this a priority.
That is super important
Like I'm
because
very passionate about that. Like if you're an adult, you want to fuck up your own diet, fine, but don't fuck up a kid's diet because now we have to have the same conversation with that kid when they turn to be an adult.
yeah, and that same thing with movement, separate conversation, but yes, you're and at that point you're providing an example for a future generation, and there should be some sense of responsibility to, you know what, I'm struggling with this, and I wouldn't want my offspring to struggle with the
Right.
same
So
shit.
let me educate myself
Yep.
on how to make this better.
Yeah, and man, we could have conversations there. We'll save
Yeah.
that. We'll save
So
that. But
quality of food over restriction is first. And then once you're eating good food and you feel like you have, your proteins up, you're like, I cut out a lot of processed foods. Maybe you still have some. Hey, that's okay. But if you're feeling better, awesome. Now is the time to, okay, do I need to restrict calories? Am I eating too much? I don't know. That's a conversation you need to have with a healthcare provider or a dietitian or a nutritionist, or you do you get the information and do the research on your own. Now, when you start to work on, after you've increased the quality of your food, then making changes, I would always try to increase protein and then decrease the other things. Protein is king. It needs to remain that way.
Yeah, the conversations I have are centered more around the habits that support making the right choice when it comes to food and exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, when do you go grocery shopping? When do you cook? How do setting up your day, you're planning out your day. If you have kids and stuff, which I work with somebody that does, that comes to mind right off the rip, that's got two kids. I'm like, yo, planning is that's your, you can't fail on that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not planning your shit out, we're like, oh, they got this, they got this, they got that. This is where I'm going grocery shopping. This is where I'm cooking, and this is what I'm going to eat on these days. You're going to fail. So we want to talk. So the conversation I have is more about like, hey, what putting a plan together that makes sense so that you can make the right choice. Cooking ahead of time so that when you get home and you open the fridge, boom, there's shit there. You're not like, oh, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I want to eat right now. So I'm just going to order something.
Right.
Whereas, because I don't want to cook all that. Nah, there's cooked food right there.
Right.
All you got to do is put something in the
Yeah.
microwave and maybe put something in the oven for 10 minutes or whatever it is, and you got food, good food.
Yeah.
Another one that I talk about a lot is you're probably going to save money. I'm sorry.
100%.
You're probably going to save money. If you go grocery shopping and plan your meals out and cook them at home, you're probably going to save money. And it probably is a damn near certainty unless you're eating dollar menu stuff at McDonald's every meal, which at that point your health will probably be. Mm, I wouldn't want to know what it feels like
Right.
to eat McDonald's every day because
Right.
that's going to be bad.
And I do think if you are low income, somebody who has low income, you're like, well, they have food stamps, things like that. I think it's useful to look more into, because I know in Florida, food stamps participate with farmers markets, and so you have the option to get fresh produce, fresh food, um, and there's tons of resources out there. You can Google crockpot meals, how to plan ahead, all these things to give you recommendations of foods to make. A dietitian who I'm good friends with, the Sassy Dietitian, she has a cookbook for the busy, I think like the busy planner or the busy person or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry. And where you can plan out things to be more organized. It's doable. It's a little bit more work on the front end. You'll reap the benefits huge, and your later self. So like if you meal prep on Sunday, your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday self will love you. And so I think we just got to do it.
Yeah. So what to wrap it up, I think what you said about quality over
Mm-hmm.
quantity. So making sure you're eating better stuff progressively and, more nutrient dense foods into your diet and making that choice more consistently. Let's say you eat arbitrary number here, you eat 21 meals in a week. So 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, or you have 21 meals for the week. You probably should be eating a little more, maybe a little snack in there, but just run with me here on this math because it's easier this way. If you start with 21 meals or shit, and then how do we start working to where, only 10 meals or shit, only 50 meals or now 50 meals are clean and progressively work that number in your favor.
Right.
Um, so having, where you're having increasing the amount of meals that are better foods, that's a good start there. Um, Building habits that support making the right choice. So planning out when you go grocery shopping, going shopping with a grocery list.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things like when are you gonna cook and cooking ahead of time and probably cooking certain things in bulk. All that stuff is gonna support you making the right choice
Right.
more often. Um, and reading ingredient labels, I'd
Yeah.
probably say start creating some awareness around the ingredients. Once you got that, you get down the road, because if you're coming from zero, you're going to get some results just by
Mm-hmm.
implementing this
Mm-hmm.
this basic advice. So once you got that, then down the road, then maybe we could worry about dialing in the exact caloric intake that you should be having, the macro split, and all this other stuff,
Right.
so that you can get down to your, you know, leanest self or whatever
Yeah.
down the road.
And I think what you said about bringing awareness, I feel like it's also good to bring awareness in what you're consuming on a day to day as it is. So writing down what you eat, I'm not a huge fan of it. Sometimes I have patients do this and they're like, "Oh shit, I didn't notice I was doing that." I also had a guy, I know I told him about him. He brought his A1C down. He was diabetic. He brought it down. I remember calling him, "So great, you did this. We didn't have medications at the time, so what'd you do?" He's like, "Oh, I realized Dunkin' doesn't," I'm just going to say Dunkin'. I think it was some sort of breakfast coffee place. "They don't fry their breakfast sandwiches." So I started eating exclusively breakfast sandwiches there. Now, that's not what I really wanted to hear. I would love to hear him eating at home more, but he was aware of what he was doing. He was aware of where he was getting his food and the quality of it. He made a better, not ideal, but better adjustment and reaped the benefits. So small changes, but just being aware of what you're doing, what you're consuming, where you're getting your food from, and then doing the logical common sense thing to you to make that better can be the first and easy step.
Yeah, that's actually, that's a step
Yeah.
in the right direction. So I'm sure now when he sees like, oh, I feel much better, boom, 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 dropped a little weight, then he's gonna be curious as to, hey, what can I do now to keep this going? And
Right.
then the tide keeps turning in their favor, and that's what you want. It's a gradual process. You're not going to watch this video and then run to the grocery store and buy all healthy foods and all this. Oh, I got all these vegetables and fruits and lean meats, blah 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 blah, and I'm boom, 0 to 100. It's probably not going to happen. Although there are people that can pull that off,
Yeah.
but it's probably not going to happen for the majority of
Yeah.
us. So gradual change.
Mm-hmm.
This is meant to create awareness, and then little by little you start turning the tide in your favor. Anything else you want to
No, and I know we went a little long. Sorry,
do?
but
This is one of those topics that we could just beat
we can
up.
go forever
We
on.
could go forever. I mean, because there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of layers that we're just not providing here right now, and that's by design because it's an overwhelming
Right.
topic. And it has so much to it that we're just like, okay, let's hit the wave tops initially, and then we can kind of go into certain parts
Yeah.
of it down the road. Yeah.
So give us a follow on Instagram, and if you have any further questions about nutritionists or dietitians, we'd be more than happy to point them out to you on Instagram.
Yep.
Okay. That went long.
It's nutrition. It's always gonna go along. Oh.
What? Did it not record?